All right, so I will begin. This is the November 22nd, 2022 Board of Water Works Trustees meeting. On today's agenda, the consent agenda consists of minutes of the October 25th, 2022 Board of Water Works Trustees meeting, the minutes of the November 1st, 2022 Planning Committee meeting, the minutes of the November 8th, 2022 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, financial statements, a list of payments for October 2022, a summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, and the scheduling of the next board meeting date of December 20th, 2022. Is there a motion of the consent agenda as presented?
So.
And a second? Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, clarifications, Dave? Anyone?
Nothing to pull out.
Should we just tell Alex we just take turns on this? It's kind of round robin, so we can jump in anytime.
I don't understand.
All right, hearing no comments or questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. That consent agenda passes. This is the time in our meeting for public comment. I don't see anyone in the audience. Do we have anybody online? We do not. All right. And then Ted, what's where we're scheduled kind of update on regional governance.
Yes, Graham, I have a few things to share today from a regional governance perspective. One, kind of a milestone here. We have gotten bond councils for West Moines, Urbandale on one hand, and Des Moines on the other hand, in addition to general counsel for Des Moines and West Des Moines together. Since our last meeting, they have met, and I think we can say they're sort of coalescing on a financial framework that we think is going to work, and I think everyone's going to be comfortable with. That's positive. Still some work to do there, but they've met and are making progress. Amy Kaler, Rick Malm, and I have, in the last month, synthesized all of the comments that we've gotten from all of the communities and added them into a single red line draft that we were trying to get prepared as a next draft of the agreement. All of those comments have been incorporated, and it's a little bit of an interesting exercise, but productive to get comments from 10 or so different communities to align. But I think we have that in the document. We've done some work here recently on an implementation timeline for this whole operation, including completing our work on the agreement itself, completing work on the operating agreement, trying to coordinate those timelines with the budget timeline that's laid out in the agreement and make sure that we can hit all the milestones. It's a bit of a work in progress, but that's something we've been working on. It should have something to share in the not too distant future. West Des Moines Waterworks has contracted with PFM, specifically with Matt Stoffel, who's been very involved with a number of the communities, to kind of be the fiduciary, at least initially in this interim period, to help us do some of the due diligence that we need to do with setting up this entity. They've contracted with him, and he's on board and has started doing that work. And we're moving in the direction of trying to have the next draft of the agreement ready by the end of the year. We're making good progress, so I think a lot to report in these optimism.
Perfect. And as a reminder, we have a session scheduled for December 13th And I expect we'll go into closed session there as we're going to be discussing some strategy of moving forward with regional governance. As usual, we will have a call-in option, like, a Zoom type option. Might be easier if we were present, if you can be in the room as opposed to calling in. If you have to call in, we'll make that work. But make sure December 13th is on your calendar, and then again, we'll meet on December 20th for a regular board meeting. But I think it's important just to kind of see where we are in the red line document, make sure that we as a board are comfortable with where we're heading, because fingers crossed, as Ted said, in 2023, the document moves forward, and hopefully we're at a point where we're signing things, so. Any questions about regional governance? Comments? Need to know. All right, so that moves us to item 3A, and item 3A is the proposed budget, which we have talked about quite a bit, but this is a public hearing because it's our budget, and I will open the public hearing regarding the budget for 2023. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board in the public hearing? Hearing none, seeing none online, I'll close the public hearing. We have discussed this a couple times. I'll seek a motion for the approval of the 2023 Des Moines Waterworks budget. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second? Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, further clarifications, Ted?
Graham, I think as you said, we've talked about this at 2 committee meetings and at the last board meeting. Michelle Holland presented at the October Finance and Audit Committee the budget in detail. I think we've had good discussion. Budget is, as proposed, is based on projected revenues of $85 million. Roughly 58 of that will be used for operating expenses. 27 will be used for capital, in addition to some other sources of capital funding that we've described. And we are ready for the board to approve.
And Alec, I don't expect you to have the budget memorized at this point, but you're almost. But it is helpful, I think. One thing about having someone, a new set of eyes on a process like that, as you look through our budget, you learn about our processes. If there's anything that seems cumbersome or we could do better, we're all ears. And of how we do that. Some of us have been around a while, and we just accept things as they are, and maybe there's a better way to do this. And do not feel free to ask questions and also say, what if we did it this way, or why don't we do it this way?
Okay, good to know. I've got a couple of thoughts in initial first hearing, but
Great.
in different meetings.
Yeah.
Talk through that.
But please do, and as I say, because the process, and you'll kind of learn, and obviously with regionalization, that's going to change things too, and all the more reason that we all are participants in that process. What do you think?
I just wanted to compliment, I left the Finance and Audit meeting really feeling good about some changes that Amy has made in her role. And Michelle did her usual great job in presenting the budget. But I appreciate the changes, and I'm going to say simplicity, hearing more from each of the groups that are coming forward. And I just thought this year you really did a great job, so kudos to all of you.
All right, any other comments or questions on the proposed 2023 budget? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, hearing none, the budget passes. So this moves us to item 3B, which is the 2023 water treatment chemicals. I think, let me get a motion. Well, why don't you explain this and then I'll get a motion.
Sounds good. Graham, this has been a pretty challenging year from a chemical pricing perspective. The board will recall that in July, in fact, we approved extending our powdered activated carbon contract because of shortages of carbon across the industry. We extended, or we did our line bids in October to kind of get ahead of the supply chain issues and the other challenges we've had with chemical deliveries. We did bid the rest of our chemicals here in October. We got pricing on all but one of them. One of the chemicals we actually didn't get any bids on. We kind of beat the bushes a little bit. We got a supplier who's agreed to provide us soda ash for the first quarter of the year, and then we'll have to beat the bushes again. So it's been a really unusual year. And on top of all of that, the pricing that we received this year for chemicals is significantly above what it has been in the past. We had chemical bids that were in total about $8.8 million, as you can see in the budget. It's about $3.2 million more than we spent last year, or more than we budgeted, I should be clear. That's the budget number compared to budget number. So that's more than a 50% increase overall in chemicals. A small percentage of that is due to the fact that we're projecting to produce more water, so it takes more chemicals, but the vast majority of it, $3 million of that increase is just simply increases in costs. So this is all supply chain, basically, supply and demand issues, but we have to have the chemicals. Julia Johnson, specifically, the staff in general, has done a nice job of reaching out and trying to get responsive bids on all the chemicals. And the good news is we'll have what we need to make clean, safe drinking water next year, but it'll just cost a little more. So we bring all these contracts forward for the board's approval.
So I'm looking for a motion to award the 2023 contracts for water treatment chemical supplies to the list of bidders that are on your sheet. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second? Any questions that don't involve me saying some of the names?
Which of these are absolute safety chemicals versus taste and other purposes?
You know, the one chemical, Andrea, that I would say is discretionary is fluoride, which is listed here as hydrofluorosilicic acid. We add fluoride for dental health protection. It's not required, but it's certainly recommended. It's something we believe is important and appropriate. The rest of the chemicals are part of the water treatment process, and without any of them, we would have challenges in treating the water to meet the requirements. I don't know, I could ask Mike or Kyle if they have a different perspective on any of them, if they're not absolutely necessary.
There might be times when you could have harder water, soda ash, is kind of a luxury at that point, but we really pride ourselves in maintaining some consistent quality. And there are things that happen with softening that are beyond removing hardness, so I would even say, be careful there. I like your answer, to be quite honest with you. Fluoride is the one that is maybe a little optional. The others can do things that really do impact the process beyond maybe what their primary focus is.
Are there any standards regarding taste or preference or anything that we adhere to? Or
You know, we certainly taste the water and smell the water. There's threshold odor numbers, and we try to maintain any odor in the water below this threshold so people don't smell it, so the water doesn't smell bad or smell at all, frankly, is the goal. But there aren't standards specifically. But a lot of the, like the powdered activated carbon that we awarded the extension in July, actually one of the things that it does is it removes taste and odor causing compounds, long chain organics, things that come from decaying leaves and things, up in the watershed. But it also removes things like atrazine and other organic chemicals that, herbicides and pesticides that we don't want in the water. So while we maybe could say, well, we don't need to take out the smelly stuff, we want to take it out, and it also has a secondary benefit, to Mike's point, of removing potentially harmful chemicals.
Just a little historical perspective too, when I hear fluoride. Several years ago, this board did go through an extensive review of fluoride. We looked at the science. We had a number of experts, I would say, from the dental community come in. And I just remember it being a very thorough time of the board reviewing that as a priority that we wanted to ensure that we would maintain. So, I don't know, Graham, how many years ago was
It's
that?
a long time ago now, I'll bet that was 8 or 9 years ago.
But I just want to make sure, I mean, as we say fluoride, at least as one board member, I'm sure not interested in reducing the cost of chemicals by eliminating that. So if anyone is listening, I just wanted to make sure.
That's a negligible amount, I mean, we could look at all the rest
You
of
look
these
at the
chemicals,
price.
it's not a,
Agreed.
It's not a
And we
high amount.
certainly would recommend that. There's
Okay.
no point in clarifying that.
History.
any other comments or questions on 3? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Item 3B passes. Moving us to item 3C, this is Des Moines Waterworks Rules and Regulations Update. I don't know, is this you or John?
This is me. Graham, every year, we go through the process of reviewing our water service rules and updating them as necessary. This particular set of updates was presented to the planning committee in November. I'm gonna say fairly minor updates. The document in its entirety with every potential change or proposed change is included in the packet. But some of the more significant things, we're changing the type of tracer water, we trace our water mains in the field. We're clarifying how we expect customers to decommission their irrigation systems so we don't have negative impacts on our system. There are a handful of things like that you can see there in the memo, all fairly minor. Not a lot of significant change this year, but we would ask that the board approve implementing those changes and a few others that are highlighted in the document that are more minor for implementation as of January 1st.
So I'm seeking a motion to approve the proposed revisions to the rules and regulations with an implementation date of January 1st, 2023, and direct publication of the changes as required by statute. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And once again, like I'll say, this is, maybe it's self-explanatory, but, as a policy-making board, we have these rules and regulations, we have a policy manual, and I think it's general practice for entities like ours, regularly we go through those. Sometimes a rule or regulation or policy will get updated because there's a immediate need. Sometimes we update it just because it hasn't been addressed for a while. So again, I'll repeat myself, as you go through that process, if there's a better way for us to do it or a different way, we're all ears.
Especially as a business owner.
Absolutely. Because these are the things that often do impact our ratepayers and, our business owners in the community. And so if we're not giving enough notice or involving enough people, we're interested in that. Any other comments on item 3C? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? None opposed, so item 3C passes. Moving us to item 3D, request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute professional services agreement for Saylorville Water Treatment Plant transmission improvements, design and construction services. Ted?
Graham, for many years, we have been planning to meet the growing needs of the metro. We did a long-range plan. 2017, we had that long-range plan updated recently. We had preliminary engineering done on 2 different options for expanding capacity at Saylorville earlier this year, and the result of that preliminary engineering evaluation was a recommendation that we expand the Saylorville water treatment plant by 10 million gallons per day. To support that expansion, that additional capacity, we need to construct additional transmission mains that will allow that additional capacity to leave the site and get to where it needs to go. We issued an RFP requesting proposals for doing the design of those transmission lines, which are shown on the next page in red, the locations of those. We received 5 proposals in October, and staff reviewed those, and then in kind of a first step towards regional governance, we actually brought the representatives from Each of the communities that's considering participation in regional governance, Kyle Danley brought together an ad hoc technical committee to review those proposals, to hear our staff's recommendations, and then they were given the opportunity to provide input and feedback. We did get feedback from 6 of the representatives who were at the meeting that they supported the recommendation, and so that is the recommendation we bring forward here today to the board to authorize a professional services agreement with Snyder and Associates for design of transmission improvements related to the Saylorville expansion.
So I'm seeking a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute a professional services agreement with Snyder and Associates in the amount of $1,078,400 for design and construction services for the SWTP Transmission Improvements Project, contingent upon negotiation of terms and conditions that are acceptable to staff and a subsequent review by legal counsel. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a second. Any comments or questions about this project or the process or the next steps?
You know, it compliments Ted to you and your staff on the regionalization work, because if we weren't at the point of having regionalization, we certainly would not be expanding the Saylorville plant. You know, there was a time when we weren't sure if many of the communities were gonna go it on their own and build their own plants. Obviously, there's some economies of scale if we are all working together, so yes, it's a lot of money, but I think it's necessary for all the planning that you've done for us to be able to provide water for all of central Iowa.
And bringing in the other, people to hear this, discuss it,
Right.
get their stamp of approval. I think all those things are good.
Just have one question on, aggregate numbers don't mean a whole lot to me at this point, but just from a field perspective, knowing what we're seeing, increasing construction costs, how do we feel about the bids? Like, are they way up or are they held up,
They're certainly more than we expect. And are you talking, Alex, specifically about this $1 million for this work? Or are you talking about the cost of the construction of the?
It can be both, I guess. I'm just kind of curious, the state of the contractors that we're working with, how tight is it and how much are you going to pay out right now?
You know, we feel like we're paying 30% more, let's say, for work that we're doing this year and into next. You know, the good news about this is that this is just the design. So we'll put the plans and specifications together, and then we'll have the opportunity to actually bid the work for next year, and hopefully things will have settled down and righted themselves a little bit. The cost estimate, well, the opinion of probable cost for the entire expansion project, including this transmission, was nearly $160 million, which was sticker shock, to be sure. They developed that opinion of probable cost based on projects that have been done over the last couple of years, similar in scope in our area. We think that's what we should expect to pay. Now, if the economy changes dramatically, it might be different, but that is more than we thought it was going to cost 5 years ago when we started thinking about this. And so there has been a little sticker shock, but I do think we expected our consultant, Mike and his folks worked very hard with the consultant and kind of said, you gotta prove to us that these numbers are right, that, 159 million isn't some, grotesquely inflated number, and they were able to do some good comparables and give us comfort that in today's environment, those are the right numbers. We'll see. Costs generally don't come down very much. It's not like gas that seems to go up and then come back down. But it's more than it would have been even 2 years ago. We've seen a big pandemic bump in our pricing.
And Al, you can imagine, we have projects that are one-time projects. We go out and build something and we don't do it again. But then we have a lot of reoccurring type work like this. And one of the things I know the staff has worked on, kind of in this post-pandemic world, is thinking a little bit about how we bid those recurring projects. Do we bid them every year? Should we bundle them and bid them over an extended period of time? I don't think there's any answer on that yet, but I mean, I think there's some some thought being given to what's the best way for us to do that. I mean, in this market, you know, especially when things were really hot, contractors weren't willing to just bid on one project and, you know, their plate was so full, but maybe if they were looking at a 5-year project, they would want to. So I know there's a lot of thought being given to that, and that again is something that we have to pay attention to. Maybe, but we also don't want to get locked into something that's bad for us down the road for 5 years.
That's a great segue, Graham. I'm just gonna jump right in right here and mention it, because you set it up for me so perfectly there. At the December planning meeting, the planning committee meeting, Lindsay Wanderschild is gonna present some of our thoughts on alternate delivery methods specifically for professional services and recurring maintenance projects. The board has asked us to be creative, to look for better ways to ensure that we're getting on the contractor schedule, that we're not paying a premium, that we're not missing our deadlines. And Lindsay comes to us fairly recently from Iowa State University. She did a lot of work under the Board of Regents system and has some really great ideas and some suggestions and in fact recommendations of how we might better bid and award our work in kind of this post-pandemic environment. Something we're kind of excited about and think can save us money and time and improve quality of project delivery. So I'm hopeful that the board is available not only for the meeting on the 13th where we're going to talk about the agreement, but the meeting the week before. If you're interested and available, it'll be a virtual meeting. Lindsay's going to do that presentation. I think you'll find it interesting.
That will be interesting.
And just thinking about that $159 million price tag, it might be helpful to also share kind of how that gets paid or how we cover that cost. Thinking about regionalization and
Right. The regional 28E agreement has defined a process for how costs of expansion projects will be shared among the participants. And the first step is for each participant to indicate how much of the capacity they want to purchase in that expansion. We've sent out documents to the participants indicating how we would propose to distribute that capacity to each of the participants. We got to see who's going to take part. We have to see who wants their capacity. We've had a number of the participants say, yes, we want ours and we want any extra that's available. I don't think there will be a problem with allocating the 10 MGD, and then there's a very specific methodology identified where each participant will pay 91% of that cost for their capacity, and then the other 9% is spread across all of the participants in regional governance equally based on their average water demand. So the first 9% is kind of, we have agreed benefits everyone equally, even if you're not growing, and then the other 91% is paid by the specific entity that's growing and wants the capacity. I think it's a fair and equitable way to share the newly available capacity.
Great, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of 3E say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Opposed, so item 3E passes. Moving on to 3E, request authorization to reimburse Polk County for water main relocations for the Northeast Broadway Avenue from Iowa Highway 415 to US Highway 6 project. It's a big project, hey?
It is a big project, Graham. Over the next couple of years, Polk County is going to reconstruct Broadway from 415 to Highway 6, or if you're me, you don't know the highway, it's from 2nd Avenue to Hubble. So it's over 5 miles of Broadway that they're going to completely reconstruct, and they're going to turn it from a rural profile with ditches into an urban profile with no ditches, storm sewers, sidewalks, the whole thing. So it's a huge project, 5 miles worth of complete road reconstruction. In that stretch, Des Moines Waterworks will need to replace almost 2.5 miles of water main that is in conflict with either the grading or the storm sewer We worked very hard. I know Carla Schumacher has been very involved in that. I know Kyle has also had a hand in preserving the things that we don't need to replace and replacing the things that need to go anyway. But it's almost 2.5 miles of pipe that we're gonna replace over the next 2 years. Based on the bid prices that have been received for that Polk County contract, the cost of replacing that 2.5 miles of water main will be $5.8 million. Subject to change a little bit, obviously, over the next couple of years. Those funds will be budgeted through our water main replacement program, primarily in Polk County, but some of that is actually in the city, and we'll actually use Des Moines water main replacement funds for some portions of that. But today, we're seeking authorization to reimburse Polk County for those water main relocations on Broadway once the work is done, the final quantities have been determined.
So I'm seeking a motion to authorize staff to reimburse Polk County for water main relocations for the Northeast Broadway Avenue from Iowa Highway 415 to US Highway 6 project. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions about item 3E? You know, roughly in this project, I mean, we're always out there looking to replace mains. Were the replacement of these mains even on our radar screen 5, 10 years down the road?
Kyle, do you want to comment? I know it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of it was brand new and we didn't want to replace it.
Probably 2/3 or more was relatively newer pipe, PVC pipe, that was just in conflict, so we had to replace it. There was some that was undersized and had some main breaks. Was it high on our list comparatively? Probably not, but it made sense at the time to replace that and upsize that at the time. The vast majority of it was unfortunately newer pipe that needed to be replaced.
Yeah, it's always challenging when there's PVC pipe that is new, you know, in terms of the, you know, geologic time, I guess. It's probably been there 10 years or 20 years. I lose track, but I remember it going in. It's just, I've been here a long time, but I remember some of it going in. And Polk County didn't have this project on their agenda 10 or 20 years ago. We needed to replace the water main, we did the work. And we worked hard to preserve as much of that as we could, but some of this is literally pipe that doesn't need to be replaced, other than for the conflict construction. We're in the county's right away. It's an expectation that we will accommodate their project. So, but there is some of it that was undersized and old and needed to be replaced at some point.
But that's the minority of it.
That's probably 1/3. And probably would not have been on our list for 2023, or maybe in the next 5 to 10 years. But this is the time to do it while they're there.
So if we're successful with regionalization, we move forward, we're gonna get some revenue from that, and the plan for that is to then look at these types of projects where we are replacing infrastructure around town. And I imagine Kyle and his team can have a lot of work to do at that point to kind of put together a plan.
Right. My hope, Graham, for any proceeds from regionalization is that we can actually use that to replace the pipe that needs to be replaced, the ones that we want to replace. The big challenge that we have is like this: over the next 2 years, we're going to spend $5.8 million replacing pipe that we didn't really want to replace.
Right.
And the pipe that we want to replace, that needs to be replaced, goes unreplaced because we don't have extra millions of dollars. But proceeds from regionalization should be available to help replace the ones that need to be replaced, the ones that are breaking on a regular basis, and that's where we'll focus those funds.
But as a reminder now, we're getting some money from the city of Des Moines. The city of Des Moines sped up street replacements and street repair because of their influx of money.
That's right, $2 million.
Right.
$1.5 million.
Which is a little bit, I mean, it's helpful, but.
It's great, yeah, we
Right.
appreciate that. $1.5 million of that will be spent in 23, and then the other $500,000 in 24. And those projects have already been identified, right?
They've got a pretty good list. It could change by a project or two, but the city's got a good target.
Yes, and those are projects where we need to replace the water main because of a city project.
I'm just thinking about this project, the city projects. I mean, you guys are doing your best. I'm just, you know, you can change my but it seems to me like you're doing a good job of trying to work with the city and the county to anticipate projects like this.
Absolutely. We're looking at their 5-year CIP and trying to align what we do with what they do. But they all have money and they're all spending it.
Yes, quickly.
There's an effort in there, and Kyle and others in engineering are, with each of those projects, we're trying to do the right thing, be mindful of the dollar. So sometimes, it's more about making alteration as opposed to replacing a bunch of pipe. So trying to limit the fiscal impact of some of these projects is part of the process. That takes a lot of, that's the harder thing to do, is to really dig in deep and try and design around some things.
All right, any other comments or questions on item 3E?
For the minutes, I think Sue maybe moved and seconded the motion, so maybe just in case somebody else could second the motion.
I thought
Or did,
Alex.
or you moved it, Brad, or?
I think
What do you got, Rachel?
I think I moved it.
Sorry, okay.
And
Voices must have sounded the same.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Hearing none, item 3E passes. Moving us to 3F. 3F, this is pretty easy. This is the proposed 2023 schedules for the Board of Waterworks trustees and committee meetings. List is there attached. Generally move them, but sometimes we do, but it's nice to have a schedule. So is there a motion to adopt the proposed 2023 schedules for the Board of Waterworks trustees and committee meetings?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions on the schedule? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, schedules are set. Item 3G, authorize CEO and general manager to execute acceptance of rezoning ordinance for the grounds maintenance facility property and waiver of reading requirement. Ted?
Yeah, this is a pretty simple thing, honestly, Graham. The board is aware, most of them, Alec, I'll mention for your sake, that we are in the process of constructing a new grounds maintenance facility on the south side of George Floyd Parkway to replace the one that's on the wet side of the levee, which gets flooded every time we have a flood. And we got the property from the city as part of a negotiated deal. And we need them to rezone that property from mixed use to industrial 1. And we need that rezoning so that we can store equipment outside of the building at the back of the lot. They are supportive of that, but they want to ensure that no future owner, probably including us going forward, decides to just simply use that site as total storage. That's would be allowed in the industrial 1 classification. They don't want that, so they are proposing in this rezoning action to restrict the amount of outdoor storage that will be allowed on this site to just what we're proposing to do and no more. We're perfectly comfortable with that. We have no intention of using the whole site for storage, but because they're changing the zoning with that restriction, we need to agree to that. And then we also have the ability to ask them to waive the 3 readings for the rezoning. And we're gonna ask them to waive it just to save us time. We're willing to do that as well. So that's really the 2 things. We're seeking permission for me to sign this rezoning variance document and then the request to waive the readings.
So I'm seeking a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute the acceptance of rezoning ordinance and reading waiver documents related to the grounds maintenance facility property. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Item 3G passes. Which, on my agenda, there are all of our action agendas, or agenda items. The planning and committee meeting met, right?
We did have a planning committee meeting.
But you, I think, hit all the highlights, with
Rules and regs.
rules and regs, and then, we shared that, the process where our regional partners were pulled in to be a part of that discussion of the bids that came in for the transmission line. So I don't think I have anything additional to share with you all.
Great. Finance and Audit Committee, our chair has fled the state.
Yeah, Diane is not on, I don't believe, but I can provide an update that we had the departmental budget presentations, which Sue referred to earlier, kind of just an overview of in each area, what has changed, what is new from the previous year, just to kind of give that sense of how we've moved forward since last year.
Stowe Foundation, with as much as we have going on in December, I think probably look for the Stowe Foundation to come and present, in January, February, depending on board agendas about outdoor classroom and other things that are on that agenda. So early next year on that. Great Des Moines Botanical Garden, I was out there, they had a great event there. Their holiday kickoff event was Friday night, which was really pretty great. So,
The champagne and chocolate.
champagne and chocolate, if you ever want to go, it's a
It's a
fun,
neat event.
it is a fun event. They have a lot of entertainment from around the community, and it's gorgeous in there. That's all I've got on that. Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation.
Yes, so some of the highlights there, you may remember that Terry T-Bach, of course, was hired as a consultant to assist with the fundraising efforts and some of the promotion efforts. The foundation board voted to extend her contract into the first quarter of next year, so she'll continue to build off that momentum that she has started here at the end of 2022. You might look at the financials and see that there's not a lot of good news there, but we are anticipating 45,000 coming in next month and continuing to build off that. The Park Foundation is also currently renegotiating a contract with the concert promoter in an effort to just kind of line things up, make sure that we're getting the best deal we are, and included in that will be a guaranteed show minimum. They actually put out a bid or a call for proposals for concert promoters, but it was only really received the same one that we've been working with in the past that could handle the type of shows and the amount of shows that we are looking for. I think that putting out that proposal though generated some new relationships with others who are interested in maybe doing one-offs, and we'll take advantage of those. But as far as more of the series, we will be working with the same promoter again. And then the city the repayment plan to the city is still sitting with the city as far as I'm aware.
Latest that I knew, the city has kind of reworked the agreement, and the city is reaching out to the foundation.
Okay.
And so I don't think that happened this week, but I think it'll happen quickly. But quickly is about the term of this project.
It is.
Mike, do you have anything that?
Well, you had a lot of emphasis on the promotion and the shows for 2023 to help with the income part of it.
Do you expect the symphony's gonna have the same number of, of the symphonies? Gonna do the same number next year as they've done this year?
Pretty sure they're on the calendar.
Yeah, the symphony, I believe, has been a good partner for that concert space. And I know they're on the calendar, I know we're continuing that partnership and relationship. I don't know if I can guarantee that the number's the same.
Right.
But there's no reason to assume that it wouldn't be.
Nice. All right, CEO and general manager's comments.
Graham, I already mentioned Lindsay's presentation at December planning. The only other thing I wanted to mention was the drought conditions that continue to exist across central Iowa. The rivers are both very low, they're not at historic lows, but they're low for this time of year compared to other years. Saylorville Reservoir is actually dropping because the inflow to Saylorville Reservoir is currently lower than the minimum required outflow. So they're letting out more water than is flowing in. We're not anticipating having any challenges with demand in terms of meeting customer demand here through the fall and winter, because demand is very low this time of year without any lawn watering or outdoor water use. It's something we'll be watching very closely as we move into the spring. So we're already thinking about it, we're already planning for what we will do and what we may need to message if there are not the spring rains that we're hoping for. Just not cause for concern, but cause for awareness.
That's it.
Tim, I have a question. I think it's maybe more to for Chair and Vice Chair. You know, Diane and I are continuing to have meetings with Urbandale and West Des Moines, not in a formal capacity, but just how are things moving along on regionalization. And a few weeks ago, the meeting before last, and I mentioned it to Ted, but I wanted to make sure the full board knew. One of the issues that came back to us was regarding governance of the new regional water utility. And we were told that we, Des Moines Water Works, primarily our attorney on it, had his heels dug in on not having an alternate available for meetings. And I mentioned this too to Andrea when we were meeting recently. The model that they are referring to really comes from Metro Waste Authority, DART, and others. And as I understand it, you know, we'll have 2 representatives, but the other communities are asking, many of them because they have 1 representative, are saying it would be nice if we had an alternate available. And I said I didn't think this had ever come before the board, and I didn't know why this was a real sticking point. So I wanted to bring this forward.
Andrea and Ted and I actually talked about it last
Okay.
Friday a little
Good,
bit,
good.
and I'll just talk about my own opinion on this. I understand the need for an alternate, like you said, they have 1 member. I mean, I think there's also, you want to make sure that the CIWW board knows who the alternate is, and somebody doesn't just show up and say, I'm alternate, and,
Exactly,
you know, so as long as there's a notification process
right,
of who the alternate is, we probably can work that out.
okay.
And it's like you say, I'm not sure that we would ever have an alternate because we have 2 people, and so we would probably always have someone there to represent us. And maybe we would, I mean, maybe we'd want that opportunity too, but I guess what I'm saying is I think, you guys correct me if I'm misrepresenting our conversation, we kind of felt that there probably would be a way to figure that out.
Good, good. I hope so, because Diane and I said, we'll take it back to the full board because we sure don't remember any of the discussions. Now, granted, we had some long, hour-long meetings as we were going back through 2080s, but I think West Des Moines and Urbandale will both feel better.
Right. And I mean, I think it's interesting in this, the way that Central Iowa Water is established. I mean, we are all appointed on this board to represent the ratepayers of Des Moines. And so it would be cumbersome then to have an alternate, you know, in our stead. The way that Central Iowa Water Works is being established, those representatives represent the entities that appoint them. Our appointees from this board are going to represent this board and Des Moines Water Works or the city of Clyde or whomever they're, and so it's a little bit, it's probably impossible to have alternates on a board like ours. But there's, like I said, there's probably a way to do it and makes sense to do it on that board.
So we did share, Amy and I, was that Monday? We've been meeting with them so often, but we did share.
That was, Monday was yesterday.
Oh.
Both right. Yeah.
They were both right.
Yeah. Based on our conversation and the conversation I had with Andrea and Graham on Friday, we did share yesterday,
Thank
which was Monday, that we could probably work that out.
Thank you.
So I think we got that one all right.
We just don't want any of these little bumps in the road to keep us from getting to a decision.
Bumps keep getting smaller.
Okay, good. That was just a speed bump.
We don't need those either. But
All right, so contract status and professional service agreements attached there, injuries year to date, 12, Ted, unfortunately, but
That's a bad
That's
number,
our number.
Graham. That, it is unfortunate we're at 12. We're somewhat fortunate that the severity has been low, that there were a couple of injuries that resulted in time off. That's a place where we're going to need to work and have enough focus on safety and prevention.
all right, anything else for the good of the cause before we adjourn for Thanksgiving? All right, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.